establishment of the office of the leader of official position, the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee, with regard to the proposals to amend the constitution, and this is to also entrench the constituency development and the Senate oversight, as well as national government affirmative action funds into the constitution, the procedure, as well as the House Rules Committee, with regards to proposals to amend the standing orders, and this is to strengthen the parliamentary oversight of the executive so as to facilitate public participation, and this is pursuant to Article 118 of the Constitution. And now, therefore, pursuant to the provisions of Article 1 subsection 2 as well as Articles 95 subsection 2 of the Constitution, the House notes and considers as well as makes general comments on the proposals contained in the memoranda by His Excellency the President. The business of the National Assembly is just about to commence any moment from now. It is 4 minutes past 9:30 when the House is supposed to commence business. The Sergeant at Arms have started walking or making their procession to the chambers this morning, signaling that the business of the National Assembly will be kicking off any minute from now. You can also follow up on this live broadcast on our YouTube channels, and that is on Parliament of Kenya as well as on KBC Channel 1 on YouTube. The Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, that is Honorable Gladys Boss, is in the chamber this morning. I'll now hand you over so quick follow up on the live proceedings of the National Assembly. My name is Gladys Mungai. Enjoy your viewing and good morning.
Let us pray. Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness have appointed the officers of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor as your servants whom you have been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and the welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Proceed on behalf of Leader of Majority.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, February 15th, 2023, this morning's sitting. 1, 2023 Budget Policy Statement from the National Treasury and Economic Planning. 2, the Medium-Term Debt Management Strategy 2023 from the National Treasury and Economic Planning. 3, report of the Auditor General on the National Governance Constituencies Development Fund for Raila constituency for the year ended 30th June 2019. 4, report of the Auditor General and financial statements of the NGCDF Board for the year ended 30th June 2021 and certificates therein. 5, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements of the NGCDF in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. 1, Ruiru, Embakasi East, Kirinyaga Central, Mathare, Kibra, Kigumo, Kandara, Juja, Molo, Dagoretti North, Ruaraka, Thika Town, Gatundu South, Kajiado South, Kibwezi West, Gatanga, Kipipiri, Nakuru Town, Kangema, Mwingi Central, Gishugu, Mwea, Mathira, Kiharu, Laikipia North, and Mathioya. 6, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021 and certificates therein. Kenya National Trading Corporation, Kenya Industrial Estates, Mount Elgon Lodge Limited, Nyeri National Polytechnic, Privatization Commission, Government Clearing Agency Fund, Kenya Tourism Board, Kenya Water Towers Agency, National Environment Management and Authority, Tourism Research Institute, Bomas of Kenya Limited, Tourism Promotion Fund, Kenya Forestry Research Institute, Nairobi Technical Training Institute, Kenya Ports Authority, and South Nyanza Sugar Company Limited. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Honorable Thunders Zambia. Okay, member is not present. We can move to the next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
The next statement was also Engineer Honorable Zambia. Can move to the next order. He's not present.
Order number 8, procedural motion, limitation of debate on bills sponsored by parties or committees.
Yes, Honorable Owen Bayer, on behalf of the Majority Leader. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. That pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 97.1, this House orders that each speech in a debate on bills sponsored by a committee, the leader of the majority party or the leader of the minority party, be limited as follows. A maximum of 45 minutes for the mover in moving and 15 minutes in replying. a maximum of 30 minutes for the chairpersons of the relevant committee if the bill is not sponsored by the relevant committee, and a maximum of 10 minutes for any other member speaking except the leader of the majority party and the leader of the minority party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each if the bill is not sponsored by either of them, and that priority in speaking be accorded to the leader of the majority party, the leader of the minority party, and the chairperson of the relevant departmental committee in that order. Honorable Speaker, this is a procedural motion, and being a procedural motion, I think we'll just go through the motions as given so that we are able to set the pace for this session. Honorable Speaker, I request yes, the Deputy Whip to second.
Madam Speaker, I second. Thank you.
What's the mood of the House? You can put the proposal. I now propose the question that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that each speech in the debate of the bill sponsored by a committee and the leader of majority party or the leader of minority party be limited as follows. A maximum of 45 minutes for the mover in moving and 15 minutes in replying, and a maximum of 30 minutes for the chairperson of the relevant committee if the bill is not sponsored by that relevant committee, and a maximum of 10 minutes for any member speaking except the leader of majority party, the leader of the minority party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each if the bill is not sponsored by either of them, and that the priority in speaking be accorded to the leader of majority, the leader of minority party, and the chairperson of the relevant committee in that order. Put the question. I now put the question that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that each speech in the debate on the bills sponsored by the committee, the leader of majority or the leader of minority party be limited as follows. A maximum of 45 minutes for the mover in moving and 15 minutes in replying, and a maximum of 30 minutes for the chairperson of the relevant committee if the bill is not sponsored by the relevant committee, and a maximum of 10 minutes for any other member speaking except the leader of majority and the leader of minority, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each if the bill is not sponsored by either of them, and that priority in speaking be accorded to the leader of majority party, the leader of minority party, and the chairperson of the relevant committee in that order. So many as of that opinion say aye, and as many of those who have the contrary opinion say nay, the ayes have it.
Order number 9, procedural motion, limitation of debate on individual members' bills.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that each speech in a debate on bills not sponsored by a committee, the leader of the majority party or the leader of the minority party be limited as follows. A maximum of 3 hours and 30 minutes with not more than 30 minutes for the mover in moving and 10 minutes in replying. A maximum of 30 minutes for the chairperson of the relevant committee, and a maximum of 10 minutes for any other member speaking except the leader of the majority party and the leader of the minority party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 13 minutes each, and that priority in speaking be accorded to the leader of the majority party, the leader of the minority party, and the chairperson of the relevant committee in that order. Honorable Speaker, still this is a procedural motion that is limiting debates on individual members' bills on Wednesdays when we have individual members' bills. So we'll follow the paces and ask the Honorable Wangwe to second.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Speaker, I do second.
Because of the House, we can I now propose that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that the speech in the debate on bills not sponsored by the committee and the Leader of Majority and the Leader of Minority Party be limited as follows. A maximum of 3 hours and 30 minutes with not more than 30 minutes for the mover and in moving and 10 minutes in replying. A maximum of 30 minutes for the chairperson of the relevant committee and a maximum of 10 minutes for any other member speaking except the Leader of the Majority Party and the Leader of the Minority Party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each, and that priority in speaking be accorded to the Leader of Majority Party, the Leader of Minority Party, and the chairperson of the relevant committee in that order. Would you like me to put the question? Okay, that's the mood of the House. I now put the question that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that each speech in the debate on bills not sponsored by the committee, the Leader of Majority Party or the Leader of Minority Party be limited as follows. A maximum of 3 hours and 30 minutes with not more than 30 minutes for the mover in moving and 10 minutes in replying. A maximum of 30 minutes for the chairperson of the relevant committee and a maximum of 10 minutes for any other member speaking except the Leader of Majority Party and the Leader of Minority Party, who shall be limited to the maximum of 15 minutes each, and that priority in speaking be accorded to the Leader of Majority, the Leader of Minority Party, and the chairperson of the relevant committee in that order. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 10, procedural motion, limitation of debate on motions.
Leader of Majority.
Thank you very much. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provision Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that each speech in a debate on any motion, including special motions, be limited in the following manner. A maximum of 3 hours with not more than 20 minutes for the mover and 10 minutes each for the member speaking, except the Leader of the Majority Party and the Leader of the Minority Party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each, and that 10 minutes before the expiry of the time, the mover shall be called upon to reply, and that priority in speaking be accorded to the Leader of the Majority Party, the Leader of the Minority Party, and the chairperson of the relevant departmental committee in that order. Madam Speaker, this procedural motion that limits debate on motions, I think this time we are almost done with the initial debates, debate by members. And now we're moving into business. And this procedural motion limits time. And I would like to request the Honorable Malulu Injendi to second. He always thinks I call him the other way. Now I know the name.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I arise to second.
Is it of the mood of the House that I should propose? I now propose that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97, this House orders that each speech in the debate on any motion, including a special motion, to be limited to in the following manner. A maximum of 3 hours with not more than 20 minutes for the mover and 10 minutes for each other member speaking, except the Leader of Majority Party, the Leader of Minority Party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each, and that 10 minutes before the expiry of the time, the mover shall be called upon to reply, and that priority in speaking be accorded to the Leader of Majority Party, the Leader of the Minority Party, and the chairperson of the relevant departmental committee in that order. May I put the question? I now put the question that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that each speech in the debate on any motion, including special motion, be limited in the following manner. A maximum of 3 hours with not more than 20 minutes for the mover and 10 minutes for each other member speaking, except the Leader of Majority Party, the Leader of Minority Party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each. And that 10 minutes before the expiry of the time, the mover shall be called upon to reply, and that priority in speaking be accorded to the Leader of Majority, the leader of minority party, and the chairperson of the relevant departmental committee in that order. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? And will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 11, procedural motion, limitation of debate on reports of audit committees.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions Standing Order 97.1, this House orders that each speech in debate on reports of audit committees be limited as follows. A maximum of 60 minutes for the mover in moving and 30 minutes in replying, and a maximum of 10 minutes for any other member speaking except the leader of the majority party and the leader of the minority party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each, and that priority be accorded to the leader of the majority party and the leader of the minority party in that order. Honorable Speaker, this is about audit committees. Reports of audit committees are important reports in this House, and therefore we are almost giving 1 hour to the mover to move and allow members time to speak on these debates. Honorable Speaker, I will wish to ask Rebecca Tokay to second this motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I second.
I take it that the mood of the House is that I propose that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97.1, this House orders that each speech in debate on reports of audit committees be limited to as follows. A maximum of 60 minutes for the mover in moving and 30 minutes in replying, and a maximum of 10 minutes for each other member speaking except the leader of the majority party, the leader of the minority party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each, and that priority be accorded to the leader of majority party and the leader of minority party, and in that order. May I propose the question? May I put the question? Okay. I now put the question that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97.1, this House orders that each speech in debate on reports of audit committees be limited as follows. A maximum of 60 minutes for the mover in moving and 30 minutes in replying, and a maximum of 10 minutes for any other member speaking except the leader of majority party, the leader of minority party, who shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes each, and that priority be accorded to the leader of majority party, the leader of minority party, in that order. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 12, procedural motion, limitation of debate on other committee reports.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to move the following, that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97.1, this House orders that each speech in a debate on other committee reports, including a report of a joint committee of the House of Parliament or any other report submitted to the House for which limitation of time has not been specified, shall be limited as follows. A maximum of 2.5 hours with not more than 20 minutes for the mover in moving and 5 minutes for any other member speaking, including the leader of the majority party and the leader of the minority party, and the chairperson of the relevant committee if the committee report is not moved by the chairperson of the relevant committee. And that 10 minutes before the expiry of the time, the mover shall be called upon to reply, and further that priority in speaking shall be accorded to the leader of the majority party and the leader of the minority party, in that order. Honorable Speaker, we have constituted the committees now, and committees are up and running, and we expect very soon that committees will start tabling reports in this House, and as they table the reports, then we give them an opportunity, we give members an opportunity for the debates to take place, and therefore we propose that these are the limitations of time that we take on committee reports other than limitation of debate on other committee reports. I would like to request the Honorable Lillian, the COE, the Women Rep for Trans Nzoia, to second.
Madam Speaker, I second.
May I propose the question? I propose that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that each speech in debate on other committee reports, including a report of a joint committee of Houses of Parliament or any other report submitted to the House for which limitation of time has not been specified, shall be limited as follows. A maximum of 2.5 hours, with no more than 20 minutes for the mover in moving and 5 minutes for any other member speaking, including the leader of majority party, the leader of minority party, and the chairperson of the relevant committee, if the committee report is not moved by the chairperson of that relevant committee, and that 10 minutes before expiry of the time, the mover shall be called upon to reply, and further, that the priority in speaking shall be accorded to the leader of majority party, the leader of minority party, in that order. Put the question. I can see the House wants to put the question. I now put the question that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97-1, this House orders that each speech in debate on other committee reports, including a report of a joint committee of Houses of Parliament or any other report submitted to the House for which limitation of time has not been specified, shall be limited as follows. A maximum of 2.5 hours, with not more than 20 minutes for the mover in moving and 5 minutes for any other member speaking, including the leader of majority party, the leader of minority party, and the chairperson of the relevant committee, if the committee report is not moved by the chairperson of that relevant committee. And that 10 minutes before the expiry of the time, the mover shall be called upon to reply, and further that priority in speaking shall be accorded to the leader of majority party and the leader of minority party, in that order. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 13, procedural motion, limitation of debate on the address by the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that, noting that Standing Order 24-6 provides that debate on a motion on the address by the President shall be limited to not more than 4 sitting days, and pursuant to the provisions of Standing 97-1, this House orders that debate on a motion on the address by His Excellency the President under Article 132(1)(a) of the Constitution shall be limited as follows. A maximum of 30 minutes for the mover in moving, 20 minutes for the leader of the minority party, and 10 minutes each to the chairpersons of the departmental committees on justice and legal affairs to speak on the report submitted under Article 132(1)(c)(i) of the Constitution relating to the realization of the national values, the chairperson of the departmental committee on defense, intelligence, and foreign relations to speak on the report submitted under Article 132(1)(c)(3) of the Constitution relating to the progress made in fulfilling the international obligations of the Republic, and the chairpersons of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs to speak on the report submitted under Article 247 of the Constitution relating to the state of the security of the country, and 5 minutes for any other member speaking, and that 10 minutes before the expiry of the time, the mover shall be called upon to reply. Honorable Speaker, it is constitutional that the President addresses this Assembly in the State of the Nation and lays on the table of this House several reports, including the reports on the realization of the national values, the reports on progress made in fulfilling the international obligations of the Republic, and state of the security of the country. The President lays these papers, and therefore the relevant departmental committee chairpersons will have an opportunity to speak on them. But again, members have each 5 minutes to speak on these reports. Honorable Speaker, this is an important tradition of this Parliament as provided in the Constitution, and therefore as Parliament we provide that debate takes place and that the time limitations be as we have suggested. Honorable Speaker, I would like to request the Honorable Member for Mandera, Zuleha, to speak on, to second this motion. Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, I second the motion.
Honorable members, I now put propose the question that noting the Standing Order 24(6) provides that debate on a motion on the address by the President shall be limited to not more than 4 sitting days, and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97(1), this House orders that the debate on a motion on the address by His Excellency the President under Article 132(1)(a) of the Constitution shall be limited as follows: a maximum of 30 minutes for the mover in moving, 20 minutes for the leader of minority party, and 10 minutes each to the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs to speak on the report submitted under Article 132(c)(1) of the Constitution relating to the realization of national values. The chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations to speak on the report submitted by Article 132(1)(c)(3) of the Constitution relating to the progress made in fulfilling the international obligations of the Republic, and the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs to speak on the report submitted under Article 247 of the Constitution relating to the state of security of the country, and 5 minutes for any other member speaking, and 10 minutes before expiry of the time the mover shall be called upon to reply. I now put the question that noting the Standing Order 24(6) provides the debate on the motion on the address of the President shall be limited to not more than 4 sitting days, and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 97(1), this House orders that debate on a motion on the address by His Excellency the President under Article 132(1)(a) of the Constitution shall be limited as follows: a maximum of 30 minutes for the mover in moving, 20 minutes for the leader of minority party, and 10 minutes for each to the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs to speak on the report submitted under Article 132(1)(c)(1) of the Constitution relating to the realization of national values. The chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations to speak on the report under Article 132(1)(c)(3) of the Constitution relating to the progress in fulfilling the international obligations of the Republic, and the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs to speak on the report submitted under Article 247 of the Constitution relating to the state of security of the country, and 5 minutes for any other member speaking, and that 10 minutes before the expiry of time, the mover shall be called upon to reply. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of us of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I think the Honorable Engineer Thunders Nzambi, member for Kilome, we shall indulge you. You were not present when we started earlier, but because we don't have too much business now, we are going to indulge you. Hopefully that will not happen going forward. Where is the engineer? Engineer Zambia, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to give notice of the following important motion, which actually touches on all the 290 constituencies in our country. That aware that Article 57 of the Constitution outlines the measures to be taken to ensure the rights of elderly persons, noting that the elderly persons, particularly from vulnerable backgrounds, who are in the dire need of across the country, require financial and for their sustainability in regard to their health and well-being, recognizing that the Older Persons Cash Transfer, or OPCT program, was launched in 2007 with the purpose of facilitation of a monthly cash transfer to the disadvantaged and vulnerable elderly persons from identified deserving households who are 65 years and above across the country, concerned that registration of persons of 65 years and above was last conducted in the year 2016, cognizant of the fact that there are many elderly persons who have since attained the age of 65 years and are yet to be registered under the Older Persons Cash Transfer Program, further concerned that the program has in the recent past undergone unprecedented encounters in regard to new entries, technical mode of fund transfer and development, digital registration of elderly persons, inadequate monitoring, and irregular receipts of funds. This House resolves that the national government, through the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, undertakes continuous and timely registration of elderly persons under the Older Persons Cash Transfer Program. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We can now move to the next.
Order number 14, the Land Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 40 of 2022, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Land Act 2012. Order number 15, the Pensions Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 44 of 2022, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Pensions Act and for connected purposes. Order number 16, motion, general debate on the proposal to amend, proposal to Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and the standing orders.
Leader of Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion that, noting the contents of the memorandum submitted to Parliament by His Excellency the President, asking Parliament to consider initiate amendments to the Constitution, acknowledging that actualization of the proposals which relate to inter alia the composition of Parliament as provided for in Articles 97 and 98 of the Constitution, in order to attain the two-thirds gender principle, the creation of the office of Leader of Official Position in Parliament, and the inclusion of various funds in the Constitution would necessitate amendments to the Constitution, while the restructuring of parliamentary oversight to allow for cabinet secretaries to appear before the Houses of Parliament to respond to questions by members would require the amendment of standing orders. Further acknowledging that the Speaker vide a notification issued on the 9th of December 2022 referred the matters raised in the memorandum to the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs with regard to the proposals relating to the implementation of the two-thirds gender principle and the establishment of the Office of the Leader of Official Position, the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee with regard to proposals to amend the Constitution to entrench the Constituency Development Fund, Senate Oversight and National Government Affirmative Action Funds, and the Procedure and House Rules Committee with regard to proposals to amend the standing orders to strengthen parliamentary oversight of the executive so as to facilitate public participation pursuant to Article 118 of the Constitution. Now, therefore, pursuant to the provisions of Articles 1, Sub-Article 2, and Article 95, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution, this House notes, considers, and makes general comments on the proposals contained in the memorandum by His Excellency the President. Honorable Speaker, members will recall that indeed, as indicated on the motion, as published in the other paper, The Speaker did relay the memorandum from His Excellency the President on the 9th of December and committed.
Honorable Nikal, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me also take this opportunity to wish my colleagues welcome back after a long recess. I was not here yesterday. Madam Speaker, my point of order is, this is an extremely important motion, and maybe I should have raised this even for the other orders that we had. And this is Wednesday morning, which is solely for members' bills. Are we in order to actually bring this motion at this time on a Wednesday morning when we should actually be discussing members' bills? And two, Madam Speaker, we may need, maybe not all of us are aware, what does it mean for the future of this when we say note, consider, and make general comments on such an important motion? Madam Speaker, I would be most grateful if you would give guidance on those two. Why? One, why on Wednesday? Two, what is the import? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Nikal, you may have brought in an important issue, but the House Business Committee that sat resolved that it be brought in today. And as you're aware, honorable members, I think let's do this. Let us first, let's approve the motion, and then as to which date, we can still agree on which date we shall learn. What is your, okay, your member,
Madam Speaker,
member.
Madam Speaker, with all due respect, I would like to point out that if any motion from majority or minority side has to be transacted on Wednesday morning, the leave of the House must be sought and must be granted. It cannot be done by House Business Committee. That is beyond their limits. So, Madam Speaker, it would have been very easy for the leader majority first to bring a motion to exempt the morning sitting debate and allow a motion by majority or minority. You know, we have to set precedent here, Madam Speaker, with all due respect.
Leader of majority party, I think you're so advised. I will give you the indulgence to seek leave.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and it is indeed true. And let me take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Nikal, because we must be a house of procedures, and we're already a house of procedures and precedents. And it is indeed true that any other motion, other than motions sponsored by individual members, we ought to have leave of the House. And my apologies for that oversight, Honorable Speaker. And the clerk's office should note, because that should actually have been on the order paper to have a procedural motion. And therefore, I want to beg, Honorable Speaker, that I do move a motion, a procedural motion, to seek leave of the House to have the motion on the order paper as motion 16. The procedure, the motion listed on the order paper as motion number 16, as order number 16, Honorable Speaker, that we seek leave of the House to have this motion, the general debate on this motion this morning. Honorable Speaker, you are aware that, and members are aware, that the only notice of motion that has just been given by the Honorable Zambia, belatedly so, because you should also have done that under order number 5, is the only private member's motion. And I think this afternoon there will be another one noticed by the Honorable Gathoni wa Mushomba, as approved by the House Business Committee. And therefore, in the absence of those individual members' bills, it was in the wisdom of the House Business Committee that we allow this debate this morning. And therefore, seek the members' indulgence and seek leave of the House to have this debate this morning. And I want to request the Honorable Member for Kwanza, the one and only Ferdinand Wanyonyi, to second.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I do not see any...
One moment, there's still a point of order by Honorable Nyikal.
Even seeking leave has a process of how it comes. In fact, it should have been in the order of today, saying that the motion to seek leave to discuss this. We then would then discuss that and proceed. We cannot come to the House without that having even been discussed in the House Business Committee and then suddenly realizing that we did not do the correct thing. We now want to do it without having discussed it in the House Business Committee. Madam Speaker, in my view, the most most practical way is actually to step this down and then maybe in the afternoon or tomorrow bring the motion for seeking leave of the House. But to do it now would be rather pedestrian. And I think we should just do, this is an important motion, we should not start on a faulty step. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, I'll give you a chance to respond to that.
Honorable Speaker, you know, I have a lot of respect for Dr. Nyikal, and he knows his famous definition of government. Therefore, I don't like to rattle government. And Honorable Nyikal knows what I mean. But I think Honorable Nyikal now is completely out of order because, one, the Honorable Nyikal does not sit in the House Business Committee, and indeed this matter was discussed in the House Business Committee and approved by the House Business Committee. And I've just sought the indulgence of the House because it was an oversight by the clerk's office, whoever prepared the order paper, not to have the procedural motion. And Honorable Speaker, again, the procedural motion is being done under your approval because you just called me out to move the procedural motion in line with the point of order that he had raised. Therefore, unless the Honorable Nyikal does not want to sit in the House, and he's free to take leave, but allow the other members who are in this House who want to debate these important issues for the nation to debate. Honorable Speaker, I had moved and sought the Honorable Member for Kwanza to second, if you...
Honorable members, pursuant to Standing Order number 1, it says, in cases where matters are not expressly provided for by the standing orders or by orders of the House, any procedural motion shall be decided by the Speaker. I think in this case, the Leader of Majority has sought leave, and I think I will ask for the approval of the House to grant him the leave to proceed with this procedural motion. So I will now propose the question. It's already been proposed. Okay, let him second. Okay.
Madam Speaker, despite all this confusion, I take this opportunity to second the motion because it's important that we talk about this motion so that, you know, we can together can go forward. So, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I don't see anything wrong with this motion, and therefore I second the motion.
I now propose that leave be granted for the motion on the general debate on the proposal of Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and the standing order. Does proceed. Can I put the question? I now put the question that leave be granted for the motion on general debate on the proposal to Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and standing orders be allowed as a procedural motion on limitation of time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of that opinion, contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it. You're out on number, Dr. Nyikal.
Honorable Speaker, I do hope that our good friends, the new members of Parliament, are learning from experienced legislators like Dr. Nyikal, because there are many ways of skinning a cat, and you could see his sole intention was not to have this continue. But Honorable Speaker, I think it's only fair that now that we have put that vote, Honorable Speaker, I was saying, this memorandum by the President, Honorable Speaker, touches on a number of very pertinent issues, Honorable Speaker, Top among them is the issue that we already had general debate on, and not all we're asking this morning, Honorable Speaker, is for members to ventilate, members to have that general debate on the various proposals contained in that memorandum. Now, saying a number of, part of those issues we had actually had general debate on, the issue of the Affirmative Action Fund, GAF, the issue of the Senate Oversight Fund, and of course the issue of NGCDF funds. We already had the general debate, you remember, in the first session, and in the same general debate that we seek to have on the other proposals on the 2/3 gender rule and the creation of the office of Leader of Official Opposition, and of course the proposed amendment to our own standing orders on having cabinet secretaries appear in the House to answer to questions, statements, and issues that are of concern to the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, members will recall that in the 11th Parliament, the Honorable Aden Duale, as Leader of Majority, did bring a bill to amend the Constitution to actualize the 2/3 affirmative, 2/3 gender rule principle in the Constitution. And I think also in the 12th Parliament, all these attempts failed. I think also in the 11th Parliament, the Honorable Chepkonga, then as Chair of JLAC, had an attempt. And of course, you are sincerely, the Speaker herself has had an attempt to amend the Constitution to actualize this 2/3 gender principle in the bill that was sponsored by none other than yourself, Honorable Speaker, Gladys Bose-Sholei. And I think there is also the current bill that you have also, the Speaker has also proposed in her capacity as a Member of Parliament. And that bill had actually been allowed to by the House Business Committee, and I'm advised it was notified to the House Business Committee that the Honorable Speaker has agreed to, not really step it down, but to allow debate, because this debate will only go to enrich part of the proposals that the Honorable Sholei and any other member would have on the question of the 2/3 gender rule. And I think over time, members will appreciate that the 3 or 4 attempts to actualize the 2/3 gender rule has been a struggle. And indeed, in all occasions, I think the last one, we could not even raise the 2/3 majority to be able to pass that particular amendment. And sadly, it took the former Chief Justice, the Honorable Maraga, writing to the President, the then President, President Uhuru Kenyatta, to take action and dissolve the House because the House was said to be unconstitutional. This, Honorable Speaker, persists today. As we are currently constituted, we are yet to achieve that 2/3 gender rule. And therefore, it could also be said that this House is not constitutionally constituted. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, the President, in his wisdom, in his memorandum, has sought to help the House think through some of the proposals, as the Honorable Sholei has thought through her proposals on how do we actualize this so that we can constitute the House constitutionally and in line with what was provided for in our 2010 Constitution, that no single gender will be more than 2/3. And those who are less, then there will be measures taken and through legislation or amendments to the Constitution to actualize the 2/3 gender rule. Honorable Speaker, if you read the President's memoranda, Honorable Speaker, with the number of our women legislators elected in this Parliament, Honorable Speaker, other than the 47 county women reps that are actually affirmative seats, we have another 28 single-member constituency MPs, some of whom are seated here, and I noted the Honorable Amushomba, the Honorable Member for Moiben, who are representing single-member constituencies. And congratulations to these very good ladies who had to fight it out among us many other aspirants who are seeking to lead constituencies, and they made it. Honorable Speaker, we can only encourage our women to fight it out in elections for us to eventually have elected members, not just nominated members into this House, who will help us achieve the 2/3 gender rule. But in the absence of that, Honorable Speaker, then we have no choice but to make amendments to the Constitution that will ensure that we achieve this 2/3 gender rule. I hear the member for Endebes adding the indomitable member for Narok North, the Honorable Agnes, who also is a single constituency member in Narok constituency, and in a very difficult terrain in Narok North, in a community that initially did not believe in the power and leadership of women. But if the people of Narok North, the people of Kajiado, the people of Moiben, the people of Githunguri, the people of Samburu West, the people of which other constituency? Kitui South, the people of Laikipia, the Honorable Sarah Korere, many Kenyans in areas that the societies were very patriarchal and never believed in the leadership of women, today appreciate that women can also make very good leaders, and they are as good, if not better, than men leaders, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, it is up to this House, Honorable Speaker, to debate and see how then do we actualize this. Over time, Honorable Speaker, it may be that it is the other gender, the male gender, that will need affirmative action. You never know. If you look at our society today, Honorable Speaker, the boy child today is more endangered than the girl child. And therefore, those of us who sit in this House as men, we must know our days are numbered. And we must therefore ensure that we make amendments to the Constitution that will protect not just our daughters and our mothers, our aunties and our sisters, but also protect ourselves and our sons, because we are endangered. The threat to the boy child today, Honorable Speaker, by alcoholism, drug and substance abuse, and general neglect by society. 20 years ago, Honorable Speaker, this country moved towards empowerment of the girl child. And the girl child is empowered today. That is why we can confidently count many members of parliament, including those in Homa Bay, who are ladies who have been elected by people, by people in their constituencies. And many ladies are leading big corporations, East African breweries, and many other big corporations in this country are under the leadership of very able women. And therefore, it is unfair that we continue as a political unit or political establishments not to have ladies at the forefront of our leadership, of the leadership of our country. And therefore, I want to encourage members, let us not look at this 2/3 gender rule or principle as something that is targeting women. It is both women and men. It is gender principle, not women principle. And gender is not women, it is both genders. Fortunately, Honorable Speaker, in this country, we don't have the issues that we see in the West of the transgender people. So we are talking of only the two genders, either the female or the male gender. Honorable Speaker, the other provision, I don't need to belabor the question of the affirmative action funds, NGCDF, Senate oversight. These funds, Honorable Speaker, we had debate on them, and we know how sensitive NGCDF is, how sensitive NGAF is, how sensitive it is to have funds for the Senate to be able to oversight the billions, if not trillions, that are being devolved to our county governments, Honorable Speaker, and I don't need to belabor that. Honorable Speaker, on the question of cabinet secretaries appearing in the House, and I've had the opportunity to listen to many of our friends who think or imagine that allowing members of the cabinet to appear, and I think, Honorable Speaker, having seen what the subcommittee on the House Procedures Committee has proposed, there is no proposal to have cabinet secretaries to come and sit or stand where we are privileged to have been elected by the people of Kenya, and we stand in plenary here today or on the seats where we sit. But at the bar, Honorable Speaker, we will create provision. There is a proposal to create provision at the bar, just like we admit the cabinet secretary for the National Treasury every year in June as he comes to table his revenue estimates, Honorable Speaker, or we allow the president during the state opening or state of the nation address to come and address the House from the bar. from where, Honorable Speaker, you sit, we will allow cabinet secretaries then to come and answer to questions, statements, and issues that are of concern to the people of Kenya from the bar. And I mean the bar here. I can see the Honorable Kaluma pointing to the other bar. It is not the other bar, I mean this bar in the chamber. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, from this bar, or from where the civil servants row, cabinet secretaries can come and be accountable to the people of Kenya. And the proposal by His Excellency the President, which I fully support and agree with, is to ensure there is full accountability by his government. Under normal circumstances, Honorable Speaker, any president or any member of the executive would be very happy to run away from oversight and to run away from questions by the people's representatives of the people. But we have a president and a government that is telling us they are open to scrutiny. They want to run a transparent and accountable government to the people of Kenya, and giving us as members of parliament and the people of Kenya the opportunity to grill and to take to account members of the cabinet. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, previously we have been in this house since 2013, Honorable Speaker, after the new constitution was enacted in 2010, and having had the privilege, together with Honorable John Buddy, who was also in this house in the previous parliament under the old constitution, we've had the privilege to be able to learn and see for ourselves how effective has the process been of having chairs of committees come before members in this house to answer questions. And members will recall the difficulty chairs have had. You go and get a statement from the ministry, come read it out here, members have follow-up questions for answers that you cannot provide as a chair of a committee unless then you go back to the ministry. We now have the opportunity to have the cabinet secretary in charge of interior come and stand before the house and tell Kenyans why are people being slaughtered in the North Rift by bandits and what he is doing. And if there are follow-up questions, Honorable Speaker, we'll be able to put them to the cabinet secretary, or that of education, on the question of the rollout of CBC and junior secondary. The pertinent issues that members have should have an opportunity to be addressed before the House. And it's not just addressing members of parliament or answering to questions, because I want to believe, Honorable Speaker, members of parliament don't come to ask questions for themselves. They ask questions and seek for statements on behalf of the people they represent. And therefore, in actualizing that role of representation and oversight, I want to implore members that we do support this proposal to amend our own standing orders, and I must commend to having their report adopted by the committee and subsequent approval by the House. Honorable Speaker, the other proposal by His Excellency the President is one of creating the office of the Leader of Official Opposition. And I listened to my brother and colleague, the Honorable Pio Wandai in Mombasa, asking then why don't we go back to BBI? And I know it excites the Honorable Kaluma and John Buddy to mention BBI. But BBI is dead and buried, and you must socialize yourselves to that. And that is why the President has been very fair to us as a House, that he has not sought to introduce or reintroduce BBI in any other form, or even to coerce leaders to support any proposal that he has. He's not seeking to initiate constitutional amendments. He's seeking to initiate this general debate for us to enable Kenyans to have that public discourse, so that at the end of the day, we have provisions in the Constitution on how we can amend the Constitution. And one of the ways is a parliamentary process in this House. And we cannot run away from that responsibility, that we have a duty, we have a responsibility bestowed on us, and a mandate bestowed on us in the Constitution, that we have powers under the Constitution to amend any section of the Constitution except those that will call for a referendum, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, the issues that the Honorable President, His Excellency the President, has sought that we debate, and as a House, we make a decision on what we think is best. And Honorable Speaker, In my view, this general debate will not only inform Kenyans on the provisions of what we seek to do as a House in terms of amending our own standing orders or amending our constitution, but also be inviting Kenyans to participate. Public participation is not only when we go out there to seek their views. As much as the committees, the relevant committees, will eventually do that. But even this, I'm sure as we sit here now, there are members who are seated here who are receiving texts and WhatsApp messages from their constituents. We thought on what Kenyans think is best for this country. And one of the things, Honorable Speaker, is the creation of this office of the Leader of Official Position. And I know, Honorable Speaker, I am aware that there are those Kenyans who imagine that it is another way of appeasing a particular person or a particular leader. Honorable Speaker, let me state for the record that this provision or this proposal is not to create a position either for the Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, neither for Kalonzo Musyoka, neither for Karua, neither for Nyikal or John Mbadi. This is a position that we seek to create for posterity. Honorable Speaker, we did pass a constitution in 2010 and created the position of president, an executive president, a deputy president, and their running mates, Honorable Speaker, the running mates of the president and the runners-up in any election, Honorable Speaker, are left out there, not in the cold because they have a role to play. But we want to institutionalize the office of the Leader of Opposition to an extent that we have a system that can hold government to account. Honorable Speaker, I have seen our colleagues in the minority at times struggle because at times the leadership that they look up to is neither in this House, neither can they find them anywhere within the precincts of Parliament or around to offer guidance to them on how to effectively oversight and take government to account. And therefore, this is an opportunity that the minority will have meaningful leadership and an office that they can call up to for guidance and leadership. This is an opportunity for our minority to hold government to account and make sure the government delivers on what it promised the people of Kenya, even as those of us in the majority hold government to account as members of Parliament. Because we intend to, and we shall. And if you fail, those in the minority, those in the majority will make sure that this government delivers. Honorable Speaker, I see the Honorable John Mbadi laughing because he seems to doubt that we can hold government to account. And he knows when they went to bed under the handshake regime with government, and that is why I refer to government with Honorable Nyikal. I told him we are now in government. We are in government also, but we will do what you are failing to do. Honorable Speaker, if you allow me 2 more minutes, I was going to conclude, Honorable Speaker, to say that indeed many of our supporters, I know those who support the minority, believe that this position maybe is an appeasement to their leaders. It is not. Many of our supporters, our own supporters, Honorable Speaker, are opposed to this proposal or have the feeling that this proposal is another sort of handshake. And I want to disabuse this notion, Honorable Speaker, that this position is not being created to appease anybody. We are creating a position for posterity. We are creating a position that will make the governance of our country better, that will only enrich.
Let's give him 1 minute, 2 minutes to finish, please.
Honorable Speaker, I was saying that this proposal will enrich, deepen our democracy, and make the structures of the governance of our country only stronger. I know, Honorable Speaker, there are those who want us to imagine that we need to go into a referendum, and therefore the push to go back to BBI that was seeking to create positions for individuals. Honorable Speaker, I have said we must disabuse that notion even as we generally debate these proposals. that we are not seeking to create positions. Because His Excellency the President and myself, as we traverse this country, we did promise the people of Kenya that we shall run, or His Excellency the President will run a government that seeks to create job opportunities and create wealth, not create positions for individuals. Therefore, this is not a position for an individual. It is a position for posterity. It is a position that will deepen our democracy. It is a position that will ensure that government is held to account, government is transparent, run transparently, and we offer meaningful leadership to our brothers in the minority, Honorable Speaker. And who knows, tomorrow it could be the Honorable John Buddy taking that leader of official position. It could be me. It could be anyone in the majority. It could even be the president today, you never know. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we are just learning from other jurisdictions what happens and where we faltered as we passed our 2010 Constitution, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, with that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask honorable members to debate soberly and consider all these matters for the benefit of the people of Kenya, not for the benefit of any particular leader or for the benefit of anyone in government, but for the benefit of our country and deepening our democracy and ensuring that our country grows to the next level that we ought to be moving to. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask all members to support. Thank you.
Who will second?
Honorable Speaker, let me ask the Honorable member for Ugenya, the one and only David Ochieng, who happens also to be the party leader of the Movement for Democracy and Growth, MDG. You never know, Honorable Speaker, this could be the next president or next leader of official opposition. You never know. And let me ask him to second. But I do pray that at one time, he will be the first member of parliament from Ugenya to make it to the office of the President of the Republic of Kenya, when the Honorable Nyikal will be the leader of official opposition.
Amen to those prayers. Honorable Speaker, I beg to second and note that, Madam Speaker, throughout the ages and within our young democracy, we've made so many strides, Madam Speaker, through peaceful legal reforms, through peaceful amendments to our laws. Madam Speaker, you can only change society by having a conversation, having dialogue, agreeing every now and then what law works for you, what law doesn't work for you. And Madam Speaker, I believe that the President's memorandum is made in that light. He recognized the fact that Parliament has a big role to play in legal reform and that we need to have a conversation. And so instead of issuing an edict or doing what was called BBI at that time, he involves Parliament early enough, asks us, these are my thoughts on these matters. What do you think? That's what he's telling us, Madam Speaker, through this memorandum. And I want to thank our Speaker here for allowing time for this conversation, Madam Speaker, because we've come from far and we've changed so much. Our society has changed so much. In America, for almost 100 years, women never voted. Our democracy started with every one of us being able to vote. And so I believe that through nudging, talking to each other, reforming laws when necessary, Madam Speaker, we make our society better. And so I want us to look at this memorandum from the President in that light, that we've been struggling with ensuring that women come to this house. And women who are here can tell you stories, Madam Speaker. You're one of them. And I've heard stories from women who are running for seats. I run a party, and I've had people who want to run talk to me about concerns they have, Madam Speaker. And so a way must be found to ensure that as a country, we make our women participate in politics meaningfully without being abused, insulted, or bullied, Madam Speaker. And where the numbers fall short, a way must be found to ensure that this Parliament and the Senate, Madam Speaker, is representative of the society. Our statistics show that women are more than the men in this country. But in almost every leadership positions, you go to county assemblies, Madam Speaker, county assemblies, National Assembly, Senate, the number of women being elected are low. And so I agree with the President that a way must be found to ensure that 97 members of Parliament, out of 348 are women. And how do we do that, Madam Speaker? The courts have spoken severally that we were not legally constituted. We've sat here, agonized. How do we get the best formula to ensure that women are, their numbers are as per the law? And so what is being proposed is, can you get a formula that if we already have affirmative action seats, 47 of them, considered, if you already have 26 members of parliament elected as women, considered, what numbers more do we need to ensure that we have 97? So he's proposing that, can you get a formula where through the political party system, through independent system, through dialogue in this assembly, we're able to bring in 24 more women. In future, if the numbers fall short, you get a formula that is foolproof, that we know that if we elect 50 women, we'll have to bring in 47 of them. If you only have 60 women, we'll have to bring 37 of them. That's what is being proposed here, Madam Speaker, and I agree with this absolutely. A way must be found that if you cannot elect women, if Kenyans cannot elect women, we must still get women on the table of discussion, Madam Speaker. And in this regard, I want to request members, look at this in a manner that promotes their daughters, their mothers. If we are not promoting William Ruto as president, he doesn't benefit from this. So if you can get a way of doing this the right way, Madam Speaker, our country becomes a better country in terms of governance, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when the late President Kibaki was alive, his opinion was that if the best evolution would better work at the constituency level. And I agree with him. Madam Speaker, if you go to our constituencies today, you look at the kind of money we spend on administering CDF, it's less than 10 million. Compare that with how much money the counties are using to employ staff for administration. It's 40%, some places 50%. Madam Speaker, if we entrenched CDF, if we entrenched GAF, if you allow Senate to have some resources to be able to go around to ensure that counting money is work well, Madam Speaker, we'll be better off. Because we need more money on the grassroots, not less. And no one said, and I don't believe so, that the only level of devolution should be county governments. And I want to ask the governors, wherever they are, that the CDF will never give way. The money we receive in CDF today will never be sent to the counties. It will always remain at the constituency level. Madam Speaker, the work of a member of parliament becomes easier, not because he fiddles with CDF, not because he puts his hand in CDF, but because through CDF, schools have been built. Children go to school. Madam Speaker, last week, and I've been doing this for the last 10 years, there's never been news in this country since I became MP in 2013 of a child in Ugenya who scored good marks, never going to school. And it's true for all constituencies, that we use that system to cater for everybody else that we need to cater for. If a child from Kwanza is called to Alliance, the Honorable Wanyonyi there is able to get money and send the kid to Alliance. If a kid from Sema is called to Mangu and he lives with the grandparents, through CDF you can pick it, and you're able to sort out the children throughout. We've seen how countries handle bursaries. It is so it's in corruption, nepotism, all these things, Madam Speaker. And so the best fund we have, the one that's close to the people, the one that serves the interests of the country with very little administration fees is CDF. We as a people, as parliament, must support the president's word. Let's entrench GAF. Let's entrench CDF. Let's allow senators to have their money to go around the country to help make the governance better in this country. Madam Speaker, this country today, if we didn't have the opposition, and you know, all presidents in the world who had good intention, Madam Speaker, some of them come to be rogue. And we've seen how our country has been run. Parties have leaders. Parties have people who speak for them. You cannot tell me today in this house that the leaders that sit here as majority and minority are the leaders who make their parties move. There are people out there who lead these parties and who, after elections, lose their voices. What is being planned by this proposed amendment, Madam Speaker, is to ensure that those who hold the highest responsibility in their parties, those who run Wiper, ODM, Jubilee, whichever parties that they are, still have their voices after elections. They don't lose their voices as members of parliament, but by providing an office situation. The opposition is always the alternative government, Madam Speaker. And if we have an alternative government that cannot be organized, has no office, cannot be traced, Madam Speaker, it becomes difficult to organize. And so we want to be able to have a responsible opposition, one that can also be held to account. Because I believe that even the opposition must be held to account. We are all elected. They are being supported by the taxpayers' money. We must be able to know, what are they doing? How are they doing it? You can only do so, Madam Speaker, if you know where they are, if you fund them and are able to know what they're doing and ensure that they're doing their work rightly. And so, Madam Speaker, it doesn't matter whether the proposals were done through BBI, were done by Uhuru, Raila, or whoever it is. What is right is right. It doesn't matter who says it. It is right to have a good opposition. It is good to have a country where critique is legalized, institutionalized, Madam Speaker. This proposal by the President proposes that we institutionalize opposition, ensure that you have a way of making those who go to elections and don't win elections at the national level can still operate in the public space. And we beseech members here, let's not look at these things as personality proposals, because I don't think all of us are going to be here forever. If you serve for 2-3 terms, you feel tired already, you want to go. Someone else will come in. Madam Speaker, I would like to look at these proposals far away from the person who wrote this memorandum. And look at these proposals as a member of parliament who believes in a good country, one that is governed by law, and look at them without having this hangers on that, oh, who proposed what. Madam Speaker, I've been in this parliament now my 3rd term. It's been difficult. Madam Speaker, we go and queue. You can go to see a minister and queue for 3 hours, 2 hours. And there's no place to question them. Some ministers have reached their terms without anyone knowing even their names in this assembly. Because we don't know what they do, how they do what they do. There's no chance to question them. What is now being proposed, Madam Speaker, is not for them to come and sit on the floor, in this floor because they're not members, but to get a place for them where members of parliament can question them publicly. Proposals are being made that, oh, we can do them in committees, we can cover committee sessions live. Madam Speaker, having ministers come to this house at an allotted time, being questioned publicly, Mr. Speaker, will improve governance. It will make our work easier. Will make the work of the chairman of committees easier. Madam Speaker, we are not rolling back. We are making it better. We are improving our governance structure, Madam Speaker. Yes, you would say that why don't we then go the whole hog and make ministers come to this house? A very desirable position. But we are trying to make do with what we have. That before we change the constitution to make ministers come to the house, Madam Speaker, a way must be found to have ministers coming to this house, Madam Speaker. And I want therefore request members to look at these proposals for what they are, not the person moving them. Because if any one of us could still move these amendments and make them law, Madam Speaker, with those so many Madam Speaker, I beg to second and ask members to support. Thank you.
Honorable members, before I proceed, I wish to recognize the presence of students from Kanyakine High School from Imenti South constituency in Meru County. Honorable members, may I propose the question so that we can proceed to the substantive debate? Is that the mood of the House? I now propose that noting the contents of the memorandum submitted to Parliament by His Excellency the President, asking Parliament to consider initiating amendments to the Constitution, acknowledging that actualization of the proposals which relate to inter alia the composition of Parliament as provided for in Articles 97 and 98 of the Constitution, in order to attain the 2/3 gender principle, the creation of the office of the Leader of Opposition in Parliament and the inclusion of various funds in the Constitution would necessitate amendment to the Constitution while reconstructing of parliamentary oversight to allow the cabinet secretaries to appear before the Houses of Parliament to respond to questions by members would require amendment of our standing orders. Further acknowledging that the Speaker via a notification issued on the 9th of December 2022 referred the matters raised in the memorandum to the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. With regard to proposals relating to the implementation of the 2/3 gender principle and the establishment of the Office of the Leader of Official Opposition, the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee, with regard to the proposals to amend to the Constitution to entrench the Constituency Development Fund, the Senate Oversight and the National Government Affirmative Action Funds, and the Procedure and House Rules Committee, with regard to the proposals to amend the standing orders to strengthen parliamentary oversight of the executive so as to facilitate public participation pursuant to Article 118 of the Constitution. Now, therefore, pursuant to the provisions of Article 1(2) and 95(2) of the Constitution, this House notes, considers and makes general comments on the proposals contained in the memorandum by His Excellency the President. May I put the question? Okay. So, Oh, debate, okay. So. Oh, yeah, not yet. I think you'll have your turn, Emeritus. Member for Kangema, Peter Kihungu. The Honorable Peter Kihungu.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I start to support the motion. Madam Speaker, the issue of constitutional change on a parliamentary move is critical. And Madam Speaker, we need to separate the way the President has brought it from how BBI was brought. Because there is a difference, because the difference between how the BBI was initiated is that the former President, first of all, came up with a task force. The task force went to the public and started collecting views. Then after the task force brought the views, that's when now BBI was brought to Parliament. But here we have a different way of approach, whereby the President, as a President of the country, under Article 123 of the Constitution, 32 of the Constitution, is mandated to address the Parliament. And in his address, this was part of his address, then he follows it up with a letter, whereby he writes to the Speaker, and the letter reads, as I read verbatim. He says, nevertheless, I hold the firm belief that as a President, I can indeed and must engage authorized entities like Parliament. Accordingly, the purpose of this letter, dear Honorable Speaker, is to request the Parliament. Therefore, the President, what he has done a request to Parliament on his proposal. We can take the request or do away with it. But, Madam Speaker, the things that the President has put are extremely critical for this country. One way is that we must make our Constitution as a Parliament, and him as a President, he needs to be somebody who respects and honors and follows the Constitution. Because whenever, like the issue of CDF, as the court has put it, it looks extremely unconstitutional. But practically, the nation and the mood of the whole nation is that they need the CDF fund. But now, as the President starts with the members and the country to start with the CDF, he still fights that he's moving against the Constitution. Therefore, when we entrench it in the Constitution, we just make him also have powers to engage judiciary on being constitutional. But whenever the President also is seeking to them that let's allow the CDF to continue, even though there are issues that has been raised, he will be working against the vows he made to start by the Constitution. We have the issue of gender. The issue of gender as it starts today, there is a ruling that says that Parliament is unconstitutional, constitutionally constituted without the two-third gender. Now, when the President now requests the Parliament with his own wisdom on a formula that cannot be so burdened to our nation, a formula that can make, we make an amendment and we make it extremely constitutional. And the formula is very easy, whereby the President proposes that the gender rule should be tabulated in 290 constituencies, whereby you find now we have only to add around 24 women and we become constitutional. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish as members, as we consider the issue of this amendment, let's look at it also as a Parliament, whereby we are supposed also to be extremely constitutional. We are fighting for CDF, but as it reads, it's not constitutional. There are issues of gender, as the Parliament is unconstitutional. The issue of opposition leader, everybody on the ground just says, this person who had over 6 million votes, he has almost half of the constituent voters of the whole country who are behind him. And this person doesn't have an office. The leader of minority cannot take the position of the official opposition leader who was the presidential candidate who was following the person who took the position. Therefore, me, I'm looking at it that the president wants to bring an issue of constitutionality whereby you don't fight the person who was second after the president is just trying to fit, is just trying to beg for positions. That person should have an official office, should have all constitutional support that he needs as a person, whereby he doesn't need to beg for people to support him. He needs to be supported by the government. On issue mostly of this CS coming to parliament, the CS hides in committees. If you reach the CS for water, the people he recognizes as leaders are members of the committee of water. The CS for infrastructure, he honors and respects the committee members, who are only 15 members. The rest 290, we are dealt with the second. Therefore, whenever is brought here on an issue in Kangema, whereby the road has been left out, nothing is going on, when you visit his office, he just communicates with the committee members, he feels he's safe, but I can be able to question him here in the floor. Therefore, the issue of the CS coming on the floor is not mostly on small issues that can be managed by the committee. But there are areas as members of parliament, we must tackle them, we must question them whenever our public members can be able to hear how we are engaging with them and how we are talking about some of the issues has been raised. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish we just look at this amendment as if it's not about the issue of the party, an issue of the presidency, but it's an issue of constitutionalism, whereby we will make everything constitutional so that even judiciary, we can be able also to target them. Now we can question them, then they tell us, you are telling us to be constitutional. How is your parliament? Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion, and I wish all the members to take the position we support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much. This chance goes to Honorable Gitonga Murugara of Tharaka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me also to voice my support for this motion, which is pursuant to the memorandum we received from His Excellency the President, making certain recommendations. First and foremost, it's important we clear the air because there is anxiety, there are fears that the President may actually be initiating some constitutional reforms or amendments similar to the BBI which was rejected. It is important to point out that there is distinction between the BBI and the memorandum we have received, in that the BBI clearly was an initiative of the President and the Executive. The Gazette notices that were initiated the process were signed by His Excellency the President then, while he went ahead to constitute the committee that came up with a proposed constitutional amendment. As far as this is concerned, what the President has done is to make recommendations in his capacity, his two capacities. The first one being the President of the Republic of Kenya, and he is entitled to do so on behalf of the people of Kenya who elected him. Number two, also as a citizen. And he has a right to do so as a citizen, to make proposals to this House to consider parliamentary initiative or a popular initiative, whatever it is that has to be considered. The memorandum talks about 4 issues. The first one being the 2/3 gender rule, very important because of the constitutional article which exists, that if this House does not enact laws relating to the 2/3 gender rule, then it stands dissolved. Now, it is important to remind the House that the former Chief Justice Maraga actually made the advisory that the House, the 12th Parliament, had to be dissolved because it had failed to comply with that constitutional provision. Fortunately, it wasn't, but that is the farthest it went. It remains law in this country, and if we do not follow what the Constitution says, there is that risk. The second one relates to the CDF, the GAF, and the Senate Fund. We've already debated extensively regarding this, the importance of those funds and why they should actually be entrenched in the Constitution. The third one relates to the office of the official opposition leader. And this is where there are jitters as to whether we are creating an office for somebody. There are arguments that this House cannot amend the Constitution to comply with that proposal. One reason being given is that our country follows what is known as the presidential system of government, while in areas where, or in countries where we have the official opposition leader, the system of government is parliamentary, as found in Australia, found in England, or UK, Canada, and such other Commonwealth countries. I do not personally agree, and I'll be persuading my committee, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, to see it from a different perspective. That even if we do have a presidential system, there are bits and pieces that marry our system with the parliamentary system. It's those bits and pieces that we are going to exploit, that we are going to use, so that we are able to bring in this office. The importance of the office cannot be overemphasized. The reason being that the person who comes number 2 after a general election is a very important person. And this is for posterity. It doesn't have to have the last elections in mind. That person has a lot to contribute when it comes to checks and balances of the government. It's also important to know where to find this person. For example, now, 2 of these issues have been referred to my committee, Justice and Legal Affairs. We would want to hear from the leader of opposition exactly what his views are. But as we speak today, we do not know where to find him. We do not have to go to rallies to find him. If we go to Capitol Hill, where he used to be the last time, possibly to be said we are going for mwosho moja. So, where do we find him? Where do we take his views from? Do we meet him in one of the committee rooms in Parliament? That is dishonorable. From now henceforth, we should consider according that office the respect it deserves, so that the occupier, who is going to be anyone, ranging from the members of Parliament who are here and others who will be elected in the future, can actually sit in that office, can be consulted on all matters that may come into deliberation in this House and in this country. 2 of the matters are committed to Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, and I confirm we will move with the expedition to actually determine them so that this committee has a house. I know for sure we have to do a public participation. We have to go around the country as members of Parliament and members of that committee, obtaining views from Kenyans. And here, what we are dealing with are proposals. Kenyans can actually reject these proposals in total. If that happens, it's for the good of the country, it is the will of the people. If Kenyans agree that Parliament should consider, then we will move to the next level to determine whether these are parliamentary initiative amendments or they are popular initiatives, which means we have to go to referendum, and we will require a referendum law to actually guide us. We do not have one at the present moment, but we should be looking into having an act of Parliament on referendum, because we have said it before in the 12th Parliament, we do not know how to operate or how to actualize a referendum without the law. The Supreme Court has also pointed out to us regarding this. And finally, we have the other recommendation made by the President, which is that Cabinet Secretaries do come to the House to answer questions. And there are, again, jitters, anxiety that we are bringing strangers into the House. We are also contravening the law that this is not a parliamentary system where cabinet ministers are members of Parliament and can sit in the House and, and deal with matters relating to the executive. Our position, as I said again, it's barring the two, because when we brought the 2010 Constitution, we allowed 2 strangers expressly to come into the House, address the House, and whatever they propose is acted on by the House. The first stranger who comes in is His Excellency the President. He actually has that mandate from the Constitution. He comes over here to make the State of the Nation address, and we debate that address thereafter. And we actualize some of the views he gives to us in the form of laws, regulations, and motions. The second person who comes over here is the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Finance. Again, this is given by the Constitution. He comes over here, he gives us the budgetary estimates after Parliament has looked at them, as we are doing now, right from the supplementary budget to the budget policy statement, which has just been tabled, and eventually the parliamentary estimates. This is provided by the Constitution. Nothing stops us as the House with our handmaidens and the standing orders, as I heard Honorable Nyikal saying. Standing orders are handmaidens of this House. They are not cast in stone. That is why at all times we have what is called the saving provision of the standing orders, which gives the Speaker the power to rule on anything that is not provided. And that's a standing order number one. But in this particular case, we have standing orders which we can amend. And after the amendment, for sure, what is going to happen is we are able to allow cabinet secretaries to come here and answer questions. We are also able to interrogate them. We are also able to ensure that they do not get away with the escapist answers, which is what we get from chairmen of committees when they came to read statements, to read answers to questions which they know nothing about. So this is a very important motion, and I would urge the House, we debate it soberly. There are proposals, they are not cast in stone. The decision lies with the House and with the Kenyans. With those remarks, I do support the motion.
Thank you, Sir George. The Honorable John Badi, Emeritus, nominated member by ODM.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. This is just a general motion, Madam Speaker. I know we will be dealing with the specifics. Whereas I don't have a problem with the substance of the memorandum by the President to Parliament, the four key issues are issues that have been debated, talked about largely and widely in this country. The issue of official opposition and where that position should sit has been debated largely. The issue of the funding, I cannot overemphasize. And I know there is a process that is in place that will ensure that we anchor and constitutionalize in a way that now those who have been doubting the constitutionality, because I don't agree with the position of the MP for Kangema that CDF is unconstitutional. It is not. But there are people who are trying to portray it as unconstitutional. We want to seal those loopholes. I have no problem with that. I don't have a problem with answering questions before people's representatives. I also don't have a problem at all with the gender principle, because we embedded it in the Constitution. We need to actualize it. But I have a problem with the two things. Madam Speaker, number one is the process and the procedure. And number two is the principles and honesty in politics in this country. So beginning with the number one issue on the process and the procedure, whereas my colleagues across the aisle are really struggling to separate and distinguish how different it is between the memorandum from President William Ruto and the process that was started by the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, I don't see any difference. In fact, if you ask me, the initiative by President Uhuru Kenyatta had more people participation than this that is now being generated by William Ruto. Why do I say so? At least for President Uhuru Kenyatta, he started a process with the people. He created a task force which went to the people. This one is a president who is writing direct to Parliament, no consultation. We don't even know who he spoke to. Whether he spoke to people who visited him at State House, I don't know. This one is a direct initiative by the president. I just want to caution members of Parliament and the people of Kenya that it is not right, and I want to repeat it, it is not right to encourage the president to initiate constitutional amendments. This country has enjoyed democracy fairly compared to our counterparts across the region. This country is standing out. This country, probably with Ghana, are standing out as countries that are promising in terms of democracy. We should not allow any indication of an individual rolling back those gains. And there is a possibility that one can test waters. Don't allow the president to start testing waters by writing to Parliament for constitutional amendment tomorrow. And with the gerrymandering that I have already started seeing, and the games being played around with the members of the opposition now being invited at will, and Jubilee almost gone to the other side, with MDG gone, with UDM gone, and many, many individual MPs, including now my party, is under threat of being raided. I foresee a possibility of a president, once emboldened, can recommend far-reaching amendments to the Constitution, which may even take us to a life presidency. That is my fear. Number two, Madam Speaker, look at the issues that have been raised in the memorandum, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, when we raised most of these issues, look at BBI. BBI recommended that the person who comes second in presidential election should be made a member of parliament, to be in this house, to be able to participate and lead the troops from the floor of the house. Look at the issue of the cabinet. We recommended that cabinet should come from parliament. And we said that even those who would come from outside would be made ex-officio members of parliament, as Attorney General used to be. Madam Speaker, on the issue of the two-thirds gender principle, that has been captured very well and exhaustively in detail in the BBI. Madam Speaker, I can say in a nutshell that when we proposed this to the people of Kenya, we were called names. I remember Kenya Kwanza and the leadership of the Kenya Kwanza called us selfish, people who are interested in grabbing power, people who want to extend power and existence in office of certain unnamed individuals, but the target was Uhuru Kenyatta. People who are looking for space for people who should be retiring, that was the word then. And we were told that we were not focusing on the needs of the people of Kenya, and that the people of Kenya are suffering. That constitutional amendment is not a priority. Madam Speaker, I don't know whether now the people of Kenya are enjoying, and that the living standard is now, the cost of living is low. Yet, when I walk across, we are suffering even more than last year. The cost of food is unaffordable. There is the drought situation in the country. How I wish that the language of President William Ruto, when he was campaigning, he sticks to that script and make the people of Kenya have a bearable life. Instead of writing memorandums to us, these are issues we can deal with. We can sit down as a country and agree that we want to go the route of constitutional amendment to introduce the official leader of opposition, to introduce cabinet secretary to come to parliament and become members of parliament, instead of passing through the back door and escape routes to look for a way of bringing strangers in the house. And I heard Honorable Murugara saying that we allowed some 2 strangers. The president is not a stranger. Look at the presidential systems across the world. The president is part of a legislative process of the country. That is why he is the last one to assent to the bills. He cannot be a stranger. The other issue that you have brought of the CS for Treasury, that is not a constitutional provision. In the Constitution, it is only allowed to make pronouncement. He can even make it from Uhuru Park, from KICC. It is us who decided to bring in the standing order provision to allow him to stand there, which is, in my view, unconstitutional. But we are living with it. And by the way, those pronouncements don't make any, there's no value to those pronouncements. We are only living with our neighbors in the East African community. Madam Speaker, I want to wind up by saying this very strongly, that there is dishonesty in this country. How I wish that, and Dr. William Ruto is my friend, how I wish that he went back to his campaign pledges. Our people are suffering. Constitutional amendment, I want to take now his position when he was campaigning. Constitutional amendment is not a priority for this country. The priority is the cost of living. Don't overtax our people. Stop snooping in our phones. If I send money to my mother, that is not income to my mother. It is a transfer of resources. You should consult people like us who have extensive and wide knowledge in financial management. The issue of taxation should be left to KRA. The president can never be a tax collection agent. We have competent people in KRA. If Kenyatta family is not paying tax, they must pay. But let KRA follow them. Anyone who is not paying tax should pay. But let KRA follow them. Let us not weaponize KRA. You are the ones who told us that President Uhuru Kenyatta was weaponized in state institutions. You are doing exactly that. You are weaponizing KRA. You have already made judiciary impotent. We are moving in a very dangerous direction. That is why I'm reluctant to accept this idea of all of us trying to run to the president. We want to support your government. The president has enough members of parliament to support his government. We must be here to provide checks and balances to this executive. And Madam Speaker, you want more. I can hear the majority leader saying you want more because they have bad intention. You want to make bad laws in this country without absolute numbers. I am still very comfortable where I am. And to Honorable Kimani Chungwa, he said I may be official opposition leader. I want to be president of this country, not official opposition leader. I will be president of this country, not official opposition leader. I don't want to official opposition leader. I've been minority leader. It is enough for me. I want to now move up and become the president of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With those many remarks, I oppose the motion.
The Honorable Member for Kisii County, Honorable Donya Doris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we go through this debate, I will agree with some members in terms of gender. Women are transformational role models. Due to the challenges that they face, they will always want to leave good marks. They will always want to perform, and women will be number one to talk about issues to do with gender, GBV, when there are job opportunities. We will always stand firm to make sure that women are allocated their portion. As we go through the constitutional amendment discussion, we must consider those that improve the lives of our people. Our changes should be on issues that promote the lives of Kenyans, issues to deal with poverty, not issues to deal with individuals. So change of constitution, Madam Speaker, should be changes that make mwananchi happy, not those that are for leaders. As I stand from this end, like I come from Kisii County, we have issues to do with FGM, issues that our male counterparts will rarely speak about. So when we consider the gender balance issue, I'm sure most of the women seated in this house will understand things to do with GBV, will understand things to do with girl child, even the issues of sanitary pads. This aligns well with women more than it aligns well with our male counterparts. So this I see is very paramount in terms of the constitutional changes on gender and even the allocations of affirmative action fund. This when you consider this in the constitution and it is not challenged, women will sit and put focus to make sure that there is enough for women. As it is now, we are competing with the male members of parliament in terms of bursaries and even other small activities that happen on the ground. So I support the motion, but differ a little bit on bringing the ministers to the floor of the House for questioning, since that should be taken care of by the committee members. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kibwezi West, Honorable Ikomas Mutuse.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand first of all to contribute to the motion, to the memorandum by His Excellency the President that came to the House proposing several constitutional amendments. Regarding the matter of CDF, Madam Speaker and the House are aware that we debated that extensively. We also formed a joint committee with the Senate, and the presidential memorandum can only be seen to add credibility to the proposal by the Honorable Gishimo and the Honorable Member for Matungulu that was debated in a similar manner before this House. I would urge honorable members to let that matter be dealt with by the joint committee of this Assembly and the Senate so that we make progress, so that there is harmony in the presidential proposal and the proposal that this House had initiated before the presidential memorandum. On the issue of the gender role, all of us agree that we have an history where women were not participating in our governance institutions as much as they should. We also know that the contribution of women in the development of our economy and in building our families cannot be gainsaid. And therefore, and we also know that we have been at a constitutional crisis, so to speak, because none other than the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, retired Chief Justice Maraga, advised this country that this House, the 12th Parliament, and even this 13th Parliament are unconstitutional regarding to the two-thirds gender principle. And therefore, there is urgency in considering the proposals by the President so that we see how we can make this House and the Senate and the county assemblies, I know the county assemblies are compliant, constitutional. Madam Speaker, the President, alongside CDF and NGAF, is also proposing the Senate Oversight Fund. Wisdom is that the Constitution has not just created the House of Senate. The Constitution has created the National Assembly and the Senate as Parliament. And therefore, our proposal will be to rename the Senate Oversight Fund as Parliamentary Oversight Fund, so that even members of the National Assembly can be facilitated in their oversight duties in their constituencies, and those who oversight counties, like the women representatives, can also be facilitated to do their work. Madam Speaker, the elephant in the House is the creation of the office of the Leader of Official Opposition. There are two technical challenges that have been that have come forth by those who are opposed to the proposal by the President. Number one, they have argued that in 2010, as a country, we chose a presidential system of government. And within a presidential system of government, it is alien to have the Leader of Official Opposition, the position of the Leader of Official Opposition. As a student of law, I know that the law is a phenomenon of the society. We know, in students of sociological jurisprudence know that law follows society. And we also know that the troops in the opposition, the 6 million, 8 million people who voted for the opposition, have their leadership. And the reality is that that leadership does not have a forum to air their views. And it is important in living with the reality of our society to create a forum for the opposition to be able to air their views. Number two, the lack of a forum by the opposition to air their views continues to weaken the opposition election to another. And therefore, there is, in terms of building our democracy, in terms of strengthening our democracy, there is a lot of wisdom in creating the office of the Leader of Opposition as an institution, not as an office for an individual, as an institution that speaks to the people who vote for the opposition, Kenyans who vote for the opposition, leaders elected at different levels, may they be MCS, may they be members of parliament, so that they have a constitutional and institutional mechanism to canvass their issues so that when they come before this House, those issues are canvassed by the membership of the opposition. Madam Speaker, I therefore propose that as we debate, we also look at the reality of our society, so that we do not imprison ourselves in constitutional technicalities and ignore the reality of our society. The person who sits in this House as a leader of minority may not be the person who controls the rank and file of the opposition. The rank and file of the opposition is controlled, as is following, as is leadership outside this House. And partly why that leadership will find expression in political rallies is because they do not have an official forum where they can air their views. And therefore I want to persuade members that we craft our constitution to live to the realities of our society as opposed to imprisoning ourselves to technicalities. Madam Speaker, the other technicality that has been raised, and I'm happy the Honorable John Bandi spoke before us, is that the President, pursuant to the judgment of the Supreme Court on the BBI, all the way from the High Court through the Court of Appeal, the President cannot initiate a constitutional amendment. I think we need to distinguish two issues here. Number one is that there are two routes to amending a constitution. There is a parliamentary route and there is a popular initiative route. My careful reading of the BBI judgment is that the President is barred from initiating a popular initiative because that route, as rightly found by the Supreme Court, is the preserve of Wanjiku. Number two, even further, is that my reading of the presidential memorandum is that it is not in itself an initiative to amend the Constitution. It is a proposal to this House. Members would realize that the three arms of government, this is the only arm of government, Parliament, and therefore the National Assembly, that is given the constitutional power to legislate, to make laws. And therefore, for the arms of government to speak to each other, the President is asking the arm that is mandated by the Constitution to debate. He is not telling us, please, this is a proposal. This is not a bill. It has not come to this House as a bill to amend the Constitution. It has come as a view by a citizen of the Republic who is also the President. And that citizen has a right to propose. This House has a right to debate, and I suppose that's why we are doing a general debate, to agree or disagree. At the time when we agree is when now we shall have mechanisms to progress this further, and then we can now decide whether it is a popular initiative, whether some of them require a popular initiative, whether others require a parliamentary initiative. But at a personal level, having carefully looked at them, I'm persuaded that most of the matters that have been proposed by the President can be canvassed through a parliamentary initiative. Madam Speaker, I therefore urge this House, as we debate, to look at the reality of our country, to look at national interest, to look at legislating not only for posterity but also for uniting this country. A lot of us are talking about the cost of living, a lot of us are talking about the economy. But we also know that the economy cannot grow in isolation. The economy requires stability. The economy requires every Kenyan to feel to be part of this society so that they can contribute optimally. And to do that, there is every essence for those Kenyans, not just the leadership of the opposition, and this is where we lose it when we say we are creating a position for an individual. We are creating a position for the millions of Kenyans who voted for the opposition to exercise their sovereign right of being in the opposition to canvass their issues. Madam Speaker, I beg to support and I beg to urge members of this House to find it necessary not to imprison themselves in technicalities, but to craft a constitution based on the realities that affect our country as Kenya. Thank you, and I beg to support.
Honorable members, I will ask that even if you have 10 minutes and you can do it in 5 minutes, then you don't have to repeat yourself so as to be sensitive and give other members an opportunity to be able to contribute to this very important procedural motion. I now call upon Honorable Lea Sankaire, member for Kajiado County.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise to contribute to this memorandum by His Excellency the President to this House of Parliament through the Speaker. Madam Speaker, I support this memorandum in Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when you look at the issues that has been raised in this memorandum, when you look at the gender implementation of the 2/3 gender rule, it is true that this is a debate that has been evaded for so many years that needs to be, we can no longer bury our heads in the sand like the proverbial ostrich, but we really need to come out and address this issue, because remember, as it has been indicated here, that in the last parliament, the parliament was not constitutionally constituted due to the lack of the required number of women in this house. It is also the same thing today, and it's an issue that we need to address. We have seen by the formation of the affirmative action seat, we have seen the voice of women rising tremendously in parliament. We've also seen the women issues being addressed effectively by the women members of National Assembly. And so, Madam Speaker, my contribution will be that I know that the affirmative action seat for women is also coming to a sunset close, but before we get there, we can continue having this seat as it has encouraged so many women to transit to single-member constituencies. This seat has also seen women rising from the position of the women representative to even governors, and we have seen tremendous shift as women continue to take positions of power because they were given a place in parliament and they were given an affirmative action seat, which has actually encouraged them and made them be more comfortable in vying for these positions that were occupied by men for a very long time. Madam Speaker, we have seen women doing tremendously well through this position, and so as we continue to encourage more women to vie for these positions and to go for the single constituency seat so that we can increase the number in parliament, this also position of the women representative of the affirmative seat can also continue as we continue to get more women in parliament. Madam Speaker, we can see that the girl child has really risen, and we can see in the recent past, the boy child has been left. It is because of the affirmative action that we've put to girls for a very long time, and with time they have grown and known their space. They have taken their space in leadership, they have taken their space in education, and so as we continue also to seek for interventions to increase the number of women in this house, we can continue with the affirmative action positions that we currently have, because these are the positions that are encouraging women. And with time, when we achieve the numbers that we need in parliament, these positions can always be scrapped, and we can continue now fighting for the same positions as men, as I know we will get there with time. I know that Rome was not built in a day, and so I know we are not yet there, but we will get there. I know it was in the recent past, very few women could even stand in parliament and speak, but you see the numbers are increasing by the day. We are getting there slowly, and I know that with the help of this seat that we currently have, the numbers will increase. Madam Speaker, when I look at the second one on the constituency development, Senate oversight and national government affirmative action funds, we know what happened recently, and I don't think the members of parliament will want to go through that again, or even the members that will come after us will want to go through that. I think we are all in agreement that these funds should be anchored in the constitution so that it's a constitutional obligation, as opposed to us wasting a lot of time, every time having to lobby for the funds, having to waste time like how we wasted the last time. We know what the country is going through, that we have a drought in all the parts of the country, and bursaries were a dire need for the people, but you saw how long they took before us addressing that issue to our constituents, because the funds are not anchored in the constitution. I think we are all in agreement that it's about time that we seek those funds to be anchored in the constitution, so every other parliament that will come into place will not have to go through what we went through the other day. Madam Speaker, on the position of the leader of the official opposition, I think it is something that we can also work on. We have seen in the previous governments that we have the leader of the opposition leader having handshakes, and so bringing a whole lot of confusion in the running of parliament. I think it's good that once and for all, their position is defined. And I'm saying this knowing that any person can be an opposition leader at any given time. And so it's good that their position is defined. They are given their responsibility, their power, because it also comes with power, so that we don't see any more handshakes, because you can see how handshakes can bring a lot of confusion to an extent that people don't even know which side they belong. They don't know whether they're in parliament or in opposition, and it becomes hard to oversight parliament, not knowing which side you stand in, because one time you are in opposition, the second time we have a handshake, and the next time you don't know where you stand. You don't know whether you support the government, you support government, or you're against government. And so it's good that we create this balance and we create this position, give it the power it deserves, give it the resources it deserves, so that they can actually oversight government. Because I believe the job of opposition is to oversight parliament. When you have an active opposition oversighting parliament, everything will go well. And so, Madam Speaker, that will be my contribution. Parliamentary oversight on the executive. I also think it's good that we be having our ministers coming to parliament so we can ask them questions. Madam Speaker, I believe in the recent past, the reason why we also had a lot of confusion on the disbursement of our allocations is because we were receiving information from a third party. The majority leader was being sent, he delivers information, but because we did not have one-on-one with the minister in charge, it was hard for us to know our position and to get to know where we are at. I think when people come to parliament and answer questions, it gives them accountability. We can hold them accountable because they will be in record that they spoke this and they promised this, and it will be easy for us to follow up on that. With that, Madam Speaker, thank you so much, and thank you, and that's my contribution.
I now call upon the Honourable Member for Tindiret constituency, Honourable Meli.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this memoranda from the President, and it is a very progressive memoranda, Madam Speaker. And I want to say a lot about it, more specifically that Kenya, being a very progressive democracy in Africa, actually gave itself the 2010 Constitution, which, among many other things, is actually to ensure that the country is managed and run well, and that the citizens' participation in the management of the affairs of this country is paramount. Honorable Speaker, through this Constitution, we are able to have separation of powers. We have independent institutions, independent commissions, which all of them are actually supposed to do or to work for the good of the citizens of this republic, who are actually the owners of the powers and the owners of the institutions that have been created by this Constitution. However, the Constitution has certain challenges. As it was seen in the campaigns of the 2010, leading to the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, there were certain groups or stakeholders who had certain misgivings, Madam Speaker, and most of them actually reached a conclusion, and the majority of Kenyans decided that let us have the Constitution as it were then, but in future there will be amendments. There have been attempts, Madam Speaker, that this Constitution be amended severally through the infamous BBI, through a number of citizen initiatives, and even through individual initiatives by members of the public, and even the Punguza Mzigo initiative. What the President has given us in this memoranda, Madam Speaker, is quite insightful, it is quite important, and it is for this House to look into it without having a political bias, noting that the issues that the President has brought forward affects all of us. Let me just go through them in brief, Madam Speaker, and one of it is actually the issue that concerns everyone, the issue of NGCDF. Every member in this House knows that NGCDF is dear to every member of the House,
and to every citizen and every constituent in this country, because its impact is more felt than even the devolved county government functions. What CDF has done in construction of schools, clinics, or even dispensaries prior to the 2010 Constitution, what it has done in terms of water, what it has done in building of police stations and security is quite immense. What we need to do as a parliament is to entrench it so that it is not under attack from civil society, busybodies, and those individuals who would want to bring it to an end. CDF, for those members of parliament who served here before CDF was introduced in 2002 by the third government of President Mwai Kibaki, knows the difference which was there before and after. In the 70s and in the 80s, Madam Speaker, this country schools were built through Harambes, where chiefs and assistant chiefs and administrators were getting cows by force from citizens to construct classrooms. But with the advent of CDF, you've seen that we have hundreds of thousands of students who have had scholarships, who have had bursaries, who would have otherwise not gone to school. And I think it is in the wisdom of the president that we entrench this CDF in the constitution so that it will actually live beyond the life of these members, and it can even take 100 years to come. I want to urge members that we adopt this memoranda on that basis. We also know that, Madam Speaker, that the implementation of the gender rule has been a thorn in the flesh of this House. And I think in the wisdom of our former Chief Justice, Maraga, he asked the former president, the fourth president, to dissolve this House because it was unconstitutional. I think there have been attempts severally by the former leader of majority, Haden Duale, to try to bring in the issue of gender rule, and it has failed. By proposing to this House that this House sits down through its wisdom, through its mechanism, through its institution, to ensure that we entrench the two-thirds gender rule, doesn't mean that it is only women. This time, it is women who are not able to meet the rule. But noting the development of the girl child in the society, I know very well that in the next 10 or 15 years or 20 years, the gender who will be disadvantaged in this House will be the men. So it is important that we entrench this, knowing very well that it will reach a time when the shoe will be on the other side. And I've seen it in Rwanda, where now the majority of the members of parliament are women. So we really need to pass this memorandum very well, members, noting that the women who come here are our daughters, they are our mothers, these are our sisters, and they are part and parcel of the society. And we don't need to look at it in any other form. We also have the issue of the position of the official, the position of the leader of opposition. I think in the 2010 Constitution, whereas the presidential candidates are not allowed to vie for parliamentary seats, it has come to the realization of all of us that the party leaders lead their members from outside this House. They also lead members from unofficial quarters. It is important that every opposition leader has his office. He is able to rally his troops from an official quarter where everybody knows, both in government and outside in the country, that this is an alternative government, the shadow government in waiting. So we need not to allow them to just be running their offices from the streets, to be preoccupying themselves in areas which could otherwise be done by the Constitution. Two, we all know that every other member who is here, it is possible for any side to be in government in future or be in the opposition. So we are not building, the president is not actually advising for the formation of this particular office but for posterity, not for individuals, not for a certain group. It is for Kenyans. The government today is possible for them to be the opposition tomorrow. And the vice versa is true. So I want to ask members that as we debate this, let us look at it with sober eyes. Let us look at it with open mind, knowing that we are legislating for the future. We are legislating for Kenyans. We are not legislating for individuals. Finally, we have the parliamentary oversight on the executive. I think, honorable members, that the role we do, even in our constituencies, I've seen young men critiquing majority of us in the WhatsApp groups. They have been critiquing us, maybe even through the vernacular media stations. Some of the critiques actually build you as a leader. It promotes your ability to work and represent them well. The same thing is for even the executive. The fact that we critique government officers, more so the cabinet secretaries, and even government officers and functionaries, does not mean that we want them to fail. We want them to succeed. We want them to ensure that the policies and the programs that were initiated by the Kenya Kwanza administration for now are able to succeed. If we shall actually go to bed with them and not critique them, that is when the electorate will actually bundle the government out of office. And I want to thank the president for being very wise and knowing that it is very important to have a powerful parliament that is able to critique it and make sure that it performs well. I support, Madam Speaker. Asante.
The Honourable Member for Westlands, Timothy Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for me to speak on this motion. Madam Speaker, it is good that this motion has come back to this House after the attempt by the BBI to do almost a similar amendment that are being proposed here. Madam Speaker, through the BBI initiative, I think the only mistake that BBI did was that there was an exclusive element in that initiative, that some quarters of the population felt excluded from the process. That is why it was opposed, and it was defeated in the Supreme Court, Madam Speaker. And this, I propose, the proposal from the President, Madam Speaker, is good and far-reaching, and we look at how we want to create the position of the leader of opposition. The Kenyans, Madam Speaker, when they elected to give themselves the Constitution of 2010, they wanted to have a presidential system of government. And Madam Speaker, in the presidential setup, we don't have this position of leader of opposition. Therefore, what we are trying to create is a hybrid of trying to marry between the presidential and parliamentary system by bringing in the leader of opposition. And Madam Speaker, that also makes it another angle that that leader of opposition must be a member of parliament, the official leader of opposition, which, Madam Speaker, I believe at the moment the leaders of opposition are outside of this House. And Madam Speaker, I believe that in the presidential system, once the person who has won and has been confirmed as the president, there's no position for official opposition. The parliament is there. The parliament will preside, Madam Speaker, will provide oversight, and there's some other institution to do that. But Madam Speaker, having looked at this, I think it is good maybe for the Kenyans now to start looking at this issue properly, that the Constitution is ripe for audit, so that we can now look at the areas that are not working, and then we can enrich them by providing amendments. For example, this position of creating the leader of official opposition is a good thing, Madam Speaker, that a leader of official opposition will provide that leadership in the oversight proposal. The other thing, Madam Speaker, proposing to bring the cabinet secretaries to come and answer questions on the floor of the House by amending our standing orders. Madam Speaker, I don't feel comfortable with this proposal because, Madam Speaker, the cabinet secretaries, I think the best way on this, I think, would have been that the proposal to appoint ministers from inside the House, and then we have others from outside, and the others as could also be, Madam Speaker, become ex-officio members of Parliament, that they can come and answer questions. But this initiative, Madam Speaker, I still find it a bit not very comfortable, and I think the cabinet secretaries, the way established today, they should remain where they are. They can answer questions through committees, because committees are set up, Madam Speaker, to provide the oversight over the executive. And Parliament can still do it. We have done it for the past, since 2010, Madam Speaker, the past two parliaments, we have been oversighting government, the executive, and it can still be done with the current establishment. The cabinet secretaries can still come and appear before committees. I believe that is still a very good idea, and we can still entrench on that, Madam Speaker. I believe that the entrenchment of the CDF, the GAV, and the oversight fund for the Senate in the Constitution, Madam Speaker, is a noble idea, so that these funds are also protected from these people who just wake up one day and they just want to go and take it to court, oppose it, and all that. Madam Speaker, what CDF has done for the past, I'm sure, I came into Parliament when CDF was in existence. I'm very sure that members of Parliament who served before the CDF, I think, Madam Speaker, they had a lot of challenges in providing, in serving the people. But through the CDF, Madam Speaker, a lot of burden has been taken away from the parents and the people. That CDF is providing, is building schools. We are paying school fees for children, Madam Speaker, who are not able to raise fees, and many other developments that have been far-reaching in the society. Madam Speaker, it is not if the county government or the devolution, when they want more money, Madam Speaker, Parliament has got the power and authority to provide more allocation for the counties. But it's not right to take away what is already in existence and has had huge impact to the society. Because somebody is arguing that it's breaching the devolution law, Madam Speaker. I believe that CDF and other funds, and we need even to devolve more funds, even to the ward level. From the constituents, we need to have even a fund for the wards, so that at the MCA level, they can also be able to have funds that they can now provide. That money will be reaching to the lowest level of the society. And I believe this is something that we need to support. And Madam Speaker, I think the issues raised in the memorandum by the President, some of them need conversation between the Kenyans and Madam Speaker, so that we can look at it carefully, that these amendments, because we are amending the Constitution, which is the prime law of the land, so that we don't make mistakes. This Constitution is safeguarded because, Madam Speaker, earlier the independent Constitution was abused so much by the people who were in power then. And then, because now when this one was made, they had to make it very difficult for it to be amended. So these initiatives, Madam Speaker, some of them are good, but some of them needs a lot of interaction between the citizens and ourselves, so that we provide the amendments we bring, Madam Speaker, should be good enough and far-reaching to enrich the Constitution the way it is. As I said from the beginning, Madam Speaker, this Constitution It is just now the time that we need to do thorough audit on the Constitution and see areas that are not working, and we can improve on them. Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me a chance to contribute to this.
The Honorable Richard Yegon, Bomet East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute also in this memoranda from the President. Madam Speaker, on the issue of the cabinet coming to Parliament, this is something which has been long overdue, Madam Speaker. And I would like to say that, according to my own opinion, I was of another different aspect, whereby I was thinking, you know, at the moment, this scenario we are going through, whereby we know that we don't have funds, and the executive has expressed that there is no fund. I was thinking also if we can try to incorporate and say the members of Parliament, the ministers come from the members who are in the House. I think this is going also to help in a way of trying to reduce the wage bill. And again, we know all the members of Parliament are always in the House, and they can be subjected to questions when they are the ministers from this House, Madam Speaker. Again, Madam Speaker, the issue of the NGCDF being incorporated into or entrenched into the Constitution, this is something which is going to help us greatly and avoid all these hula-baloos whereby we are just facing at the moment. We are seeing ourselves now, we are getting money in bids, and we are being taken to court. And then trying to entrench into Constitution is going to go a long way and make sure that we don't have a lot of problems. Madam Speaker, the last but not least from my side is the issue of creating the official opposition office, whereby all this quagmire which has been going on now, we are facing this quagmire of the government not having funds, is because at a given time, like the last regime, we had the opposition leader or the alleged opposition members moving and to work with the government of the day, thus endangering the institutions by not being subjected to scrutiny. I would like to say, going to this direction of getting the opposition office or getting the official opposition office is in the right direction, so that we have the government checked by the opposition or the members of the opposing side. This will allow us not to lose revenue and having the government which is coming in to say we don't have monies in the government coffers. Mr. Speaker, let me say thank you very much. That is my take on this. I support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The Honorable Molo Tende.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is an important subject, and I really honestly wish that there were more members here, including on our own side. Now, in the absence of our leader of minority, let me take that role. Mr. Speaker, for starters, I'd like
be careful about taking people's positions.
You know, this is, as you know, as a lawyer, I'm holding brief. Very briefly, I'm holding brief. Mr. Speaker, let me issue two cautionary statements. First, of the 4 issues that have been raised in the President's memorandum, 3 issues would expressly require referendum. Only one relating to the funds, especially CDF funds and the oversight fund, would not require referendum under Article 255(3). Insofar as the issues on composition of parliament in terms of gender, the issues in introducing CSS to the floor, the issue of introducing a leader of opposition. There are issues that touch on the sovereignty of the people. They touch on the structure of governance and the system of government. They touch on the functions and composition of parliament, and expressly, they would require referendum. So as we discuss this, we need to bear that in mind very clearly. It's not an easy path. And the question I want to issue secondly, Mr. Speaker, is that as members of parliament, it is good to look for the interest of many people. But of paramount importance is the interest of our own citizens, of our own voters. Who are the beneficiaries of these funds? I'd like it to be made clear, and honorable member said that so far the CDF funds are unconstitutional. That is not true. CDF funds are constitutional, and there is no court anywhere so far that has found the 2015 Act unconstitutional. What we are doing is we want to entrench the provision such that we cater for much more. Our sisters who are representing the counties have the NGAF. NGAF has not been properly included. We want to include the NGAF, we want to include the other funds that Senate oversight, so that we call them the oversight funds. That's why we are amending the Constitution. Let it not be supposed that we are amending it because we think that is unconstitutional. We will be shooting ourselves in the leg. And for our own purposes, I would really urge members that we need to remove that bit of the memorandum that deals with the CDF funds and the oversight funds, because we were already on it. And let's use it, because as part of the ad hoc committee, we have already designed, we've gone much further than this memorandum. We have already drafted the amendments that are necessary to the Constitution and which do not require referendum. Let us move with speed, run with that, and leave these other issues that might raise partisan politics outside first. Let us take care of our interest before we take care of other interests. And if you don't heed my caution, watch this space. If you maintain this oversight fund together with these other three issues, they will be lost in space, and the consequences will be quite dire because we are racing against time. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, the idea of amending the Constitution is not a bad one. Our Constitution is ripe for amendment. 12 years after any Constitution is enacted, it is good for citizens to sit together and look at what is bad, what is good. But amendment of any Constitution should always be bipartisan. It should always involve the public. In fact, it's not just bipartisan in Parliament, it is beyond Parliament. All previous attempts to amend the Constitution by President Moi then and thereafter by President Kibaki failed because the initiation was not bipartisan. I want to caution that this initiative, insofar as it's not bipartisan, it is the wrong way to look at amendment to the Constitution. We require a bipartisan approach. And I want to tell my brothers and my colleagues in the Justice Committee, right from the word go, this initiative will fail on two accounts. The first is the account on which BBI failed. And it's not saying that I agree with the Supreme Court. I actually don't. But they pronounce themselves. And that is as it is now. Insofar as this initiative is expressly by the President, and this memorandum starts by actually paragraph 1 and 2 restating the date when the President said it, and then attaching a copy of the President memorandum, it will fall afoul the determination of the Supreme Court in terms of initiation. It makes no difference that that was a popular initiative, because even here, the argument will be, but if it is a parliamentary initiative, the President is not a member of Parliament. So how will you say it's a parliamentary initiative and it is initiated by someone outside Parliament? And in both cases, whether it's popular or parliamentary, it passes through Parliament. The second mistake was the President writing to the Speaker. The Speaker is a neutral entity in this House. The person to initiate would be the leader of majority, the leader of minority, or an individual member. But expressly, the leader of majority now introduces the motion, but the motion is reading that it was written to the Speaker. So there are already two technicalities that makes this initiative run afoul of the law. Let me examine two things now. One, the idea of the leader of opposition. Mr. Speaker, this is a bad idea. It is an idea that is not well-founded, either in terms of constitutionalism or in terms of purpose. And it does not take cognizance of Article 108 and Article 130. Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. In this House, there is no government, there is no opposition, as per the Constitution. If you look at Article 130, national government comprises the President, the Deputy, and the Cabinet, not the Leader of Majority, not any of you here in Parliament. And when we come here as minority, we don't come here as opposition, we come as minority. The word opposition does not appear anywhere in the text of the Constitution. So how can you introduce a leader of an non-existent entity? Honorable Wanyonyi, I'm telling you now, I'm helping you understand the law. So just listen. That idea is precipitated on a misinformation and misunderstanding that those who are in the majority are here on behalf of the executive, and those in the minority are here on behalf of the opposition. That is not so. In fact, the whole idea of this presidential system is that we, as a parliament, check on the executive as a collectivity. The moment you start trying to bring the leader of opposition, you run into many problems. The first problem is you can actually have a parliament where the majority has not produced the presidency. Can you imagine a situation where if we had maintained what we believe is ours, Azimio is the majority in this House, and Kenya Kwanza is the minority? Can you imagine a situation where then Azimio would have the presidency, then you get another person who is in Azimio to come be the leader of Kenya Kwanza in Parliament? Isn't that ridiculous? It is based on the assumption that whoever produces a majority in Parliament will always be the president. It is not so. Secondly, if you look at 108, there's the leader of majority, there's the leader of minority. So I suppose you then remove the leader of minority and replace it with the leader of opposition. And what do you do with the leader of majority? Do you still call him or her leader of majority? You'll call them leader of government business, and there's no government in Parliament. But what if the person who's run up is actually an independent? Because the Constitution allows. So you run as an independent, and then you get the second highest votes. Then now you come to Parliament to head a party which you are not part of. It is ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. Let us rethink this thing seriously. The question of having a leader of opposition because we want accommodation is a question we must examine deeply and not artificially. If we want a parliamentary system, let us be honest and adopt that system. I will tell you that in the Committee of Experts, we had actually adopted a parliamentary system, but it was changed by our colleagues in Parliament then. I'll move very fast, Mr. Speaker, just 2 minutes. The question of cabinet secretaries in Parliament, they will be strangers. The President is not a stranger because he's allowed. The head of Treasury comes here as of necessity because we are the budget making. But the cabinet secretary does not come to the floor of this House. The cabinet secretary stays at the bar. So if you want cabinet secretaries on the floor of this House, then you must admit them as members of Parliament. That changes the numbers, that changes the functions. And is it a good thing? No. First, because you will definitely weaken the committee system. Our Constitution gives committees so many powers, the powers of the High Court, which have never been used. Why haven't we used them? If we can't use them as 15 or 20 people sitting and we have the power, what is the assurance that as over 349 we will use them? And Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, mark you that when you do that, something else comes into play. There's a reason why there's a prescription in composition of committees. Those of the majority always have a majority of one. But in the oversight committees, those in the minority have a majority of one. So that in the oversight committees, we can better check the national executive. If we come here with the numbers the way now playing, there will be no oversight. The oversight committees will be dead. Parliament as a plenary will be doing put the question. And the question will be put and the CSS will go. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, lastly, that we might think we are strengthening parliamentary democracy, weakening it. And we must be very careful, including on the question of numbers. You must know that the question of numbers in terms of gender representation goes against the contrary question of the cost. Are Kenyans prepared to pay 100 more members of parliament or not? I think the fundamental question we must ask ourselves, do we still need 2 houses of parliament today? If you ask me that, I would say no.
Thank you so much,
because we have entrenched devolution sufficiently. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Honorable Tiende. Well said. I hope you get a chance to pursue those arguments at the right time. The Honorable Timothy Roticho of Market West.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this heavy subject matter. Mr. Speaker, I know it's not very easy to speak after listening to wisdom from Senior Counsel Otiende Omolo, but Mr. Speaker, I can only say this, that looking at the intention of the president, it only takes a president who believes in constitutionalism and the rule of law to be able to propose such raft of constitutional amendments. Mr. Speaker, if you have a president who still believes that we still need a strong opposition in this country, then as a country we must be proud of that president. Because if it was any other president, it would be, his intention would be to suppress the opposition. So, Mr. Speaker, looking at this document that we have today, Otiende Omolo has talked about that the president has initiated a constitutional amendment. In my opinion, this is a memorandum. This cannot qualify as an initiation of a constitutional amendment. This is a memorandum requesting Parliament to institute a constitutional amendment and cannot therefore be interpreted to mean the president has initiated a constitutional amendment. Mr. Speaker, I have looked at the issues in a broader perspective. On the issue of gender inclusion and affirmative action, Mr. Speaker, it must be alive to this assembly that already as we speak, the court has made a finding to the effect that this house is not properly constituted and is not in conformity with the law. So it is a matter that we must take up seriously. Mr. Speaker, I have looked at the proposal by the president, and I associate myself fully with that proposal. The president has argued that currently this house has 290 members of parliament. So a third of it, we shall have 97 members of parliament who are women, if in terms of gender, as currently constituted. So, Mr. Speaker, the proposal by the president is a sound proposal that, if adopted, will be able to make the equation easier in terms of amending the constitution to input the gender principle. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the issue, on the same issue, the proposal by the president, which if adopted by this house will be progressive, is he has provided that the law be amended to establish a women's inclusion and political participation fund. Mr. Speaker, gender inclusion should be progressive and realized at a certain end. The issue of including women in the constitution shall not be there forever. That is why he has proposed, and I associate myself that there be a sunset clause to retire it upon attainment of the constitutional requirement. So as we retire to amend this constitution, we should remember that we should have a sunset clause, because there shall come a time that we shall have equality in this country, so that we avoid this gender of trying to assist the other gender. The issue of CDF and the Senate oversight and the NGAF, Mr. Speaker, I fully support it, that we entrench it in the Constitution. And the reason for that is that in the event that the matter is taken to court, then to amend a legislation or a statute is easier than to amend the Constitution. So that if a question comes as to the constitutionality of CDF or NGAF or the Senate Oversight Fund, then it may require a referendum in future in order to amend it. That is why I fully support the same. And Mr. Speaker, in terms, I also support the Senate Oversight the Senate Oversight Fund, so that currently as we speak, there is a lot of wastage in the government, in the counties, so that Senate can be properly empowered to be able to check the excesses of the county governments. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the official leader of opposition, Mr. Speaker, Montesquieu talked of separation of powers. He's the father of separation of powers. Mr. Speaker, for a country to function properly, right now as we speak, we have a serious minority in the opposition. For a country to function properly, we must have an office of the leader of opposition. And the reason for that is that that office will be able to check the excesses of the government. Mr. Speaker, it is very dangerous to have a government that is not properly checked. So, Mr. Speaker, instead of the leader of opposition going to the streets, let him come to this house and advance the interests of the minorities at the floor of this house. So, Mr. Speaker, I support the proposals in totality. The time shall come. My senior, Mr. Tenda Amolo, has talked about that it requires a referendum. Any proposal, whether be it parliamentary or is it or one initiated by through public initiative, if it is initiated by this house and it is accepted by this house and it comes to the determination whether we require a referendum, then that matter shall be taken to a referendum, irrespective of where it originates. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I support this memorandum.
Honorable Malim Farah.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, we are going to be making very fundamental changes into our system of government that will impact on generations to come. It is only fair that we give it the utmost thought and not think about the political expediency of the day, but think about, for posterity, how this country is going to be. Mr. Speaker, I had said this somewhere else. I was in this house myself, in the 7th Parliament, pushing for a constitutional agenda, rewriting the Constitution, a new Constitution, and saying that it must come from Wanjiku. It must come from the ordinary people out there. At that time, our head of state, the late Moi, I was in the opposition, was wondering why 222 educated, elected leaders of this country would want to surrender the role of thinking for the future of this country to somebody who's out there in the streets, who is either roasting maize or who's either doing a small thing there. I had a problem with that, but now I never thought that was going to bite me again and come back to us. I am convinced that we made a mistake and we should have listened in part, not in totality, to that late sage and listened to his ideas. None of the American 37 constitutional amendments that were done in the US did require a referendum. Personally, I am convinced, by and large, except in matters that touch on very pertinent issues in 255 of the, I think 255 of the Constitution, this House has the capacity and the powers to amend any Constitution and do a lot of work on the Constitution. When we were trying to put this Constitution together, rewrite it, this Constitution we have today, in terms of the governance, whether it's going to be a presidential system or it's going to be a parliamentary system, became a victim to the political intrigues of that day. There was a split within my party, which was called ODM that time, and then there was this other group which had advocated for a devolution that was going to be 13 or 14 different regions in the country, based pretty much on the way the provinces were then, plus a few provinces that were super big and that were going to be split into 3 or 2. And then there were those people who were opposed to devolution completely. Then there was the issue of parliamentary and presidential system. Both of them became victims to the political intrigues of that time, where there was a lot of political infighting, both within ODM and also other centers. Mr. Speaker, we had a system that was a hybrid of a presidential system and a parliamentary system. We had a president who had a constituency, and people went and voted for their president of choice. But that president came in here to be sworn in as the MP for Odaya, as the MP for Baringo Central, as the MP for whatever he wanted. And if he failed to secure the presidential votes, he will still come to the parliament as a member of parliament for that constituency and lead the opposition from here. Lead the opposition from here. We had a system in which the ministers were from parliament. And because they were from parliament, we could censure them. I remember one day sitting on that chair, Mr. Speaker, and I sent 8 ministers out of the House because they did not come up with satisfactory answers that is, in the opinion of the House, and in my opinion also, satisfactory and befitting their status in the country and the manner in which they should represent, how Kenyans should be governed. And I told them, you're not going to transact any more business until you come up with answers that are going to satisfy this House. And the president told them, do you know what you have done, you people? When this kind of thing happens, that government resigns. That is a censure motion on the government because you did not do your job right. And Kibaki warned his own ministers and told them, you go to parliament, parliament is supreme, parliament has got that, you must attend to the issues on parliament and act accordingly and fast enough on issues that are raised by members of parliament. Today, you have ministers who we don't even know their names. I don't know most of them their names now. And during our time when we were growing up, people like the MP for Kwanza, who is an old guy like me, although he pretends to be young and dyes his hair. You remember we used to have all the ministers, cabinet ministers in primary school on our own walls there. And we knew all the names of all the ministers in the country. And you knew the ordinary person out there in the village knew if they had issues with education, that minister must do something better than he's doing now. And when the delegations come to Gatundu, the ordinary people used to come and complain about such and such minister is sleeping on his job. We have a problem in education. We have a problem in roads and infrastructure. We have a problem in public works. We have a problem in local government. And that is why the late Mudavadi was such a famous guy. He was bigger than life because local government is the area where all the country was represented. Municipalities, county councils, town councils, urban councils. My position is, we cannot bring in 20 strangers into the house and call them ministers that you have no powers to censure them. You can't tell them get out of the house and don't come back to this house until you're able to do your job right. How are you going to censor a minister who does not come with a satisfactory answer here? A minister who's sleeping on the job. Based on the proceedings of the House at that time, I think what we need to do is that we have to admit that we made certain mistakes. We borrowed from the German lander. We borrowed from the Americans something. We borrowed something from the British. And then we tried to put together that thing for it to work. We are always people who want to borrow. I mean, we Africans must come up with our own narrative. It's like saying you have a car with an engine of Audi, with the chassis of Mercedes, and with a body of, and what do you call it, electrical system of Toyota. How far will that car take you? It can't take you. This constitution is similar to that. We need to revisit that. As far as the issue of the national government affirmative action fund is concerned, I had been advocating for something similar to that from the beginning. I said, instead of setting